Hi, and welcome to the DIY Photo Organising podcast, focusing on topics to help you with your photo management. I am Fiona from Photo Helper.
And I am Chantal from Photos in Order. Hello there.
Hey, how are you today?
Good, good. Very
Um,
excited because
Me
we've got another
too.
guest on.
I know it's going to be a great one today. I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to it.
But before we introduce him, we just want to mention today we're gonna talk about Apple, the Apple ecosystem. So this episode is for you if you're not only an iPhone user, but you actually also use a Mac, because we're gonna talk about that ecosystem, and that requires that you've got both of them. So Windows people, sorry, but we'll do a separate episode for you another day. um, so as I mentioned, we want to talk about basically the most important things that people should know to get the best out of their Apple ecosystem. And regular listeners, you will know that Fiona and I, we're both Mac users. We love our Macs. But still, there are experts out there who know lots and lots more. And we've invited Paul from Blue Water Imaging in Connecticut to talk about the Apple ecosystem, because he's one of the leading experts in that field. Hi, Paul.
Hi, how are you doing today?
Good, welcome.
Great. Welcome, welcome. We're so excited to have you here. So, Paul, before we jump in, I'm just going to tell our lovely listeners a little bit about you so that they've got a bit of an overview of just how lucky we are to have you with us today and your experience in this space. So Paul says that images are his life. And when we look at his past experience, you can truly understand that. He discovered photography in high school, and pictures have been a central part of his career path ever since. He's worked as a professional photographer, also with scanning services in sales and selling scanning services to high-end museums and catalogs, publications. He's also worked at Apple, as we call him, our genius, our industry genius, for those that know the Apple genius experts there. Offering support and creative training to thousands of Apple users. So now today, Paul has a business of his own called Blue Water Imaging. And what he does is offer training and support to people who use the Apple Photos ecosystem, which we're going to hear about today, which is great. And he helps people manage their photography through the Apple platform. So, Paul, it's absolutely lovely to have you with us. What I thought I might start is just if you could just share a little bit about yourself, why you got into, photography. How did you discover that, from high school? And then if you could also just share initially what this ecosystem is, just explain what that terminology is so we can set a bit of a framework here for today's chat. If you could, that'd be great.
Sure. My pleasure. Well, thanks again to both of you for having me. And I'm really glad to be here and take a short trip halfway around the world. So basically, I got into photography in high school, and I just love pictures. Pictures have been a part of my life. I've seen parts of the world where I've never been through pictures. I enjoy looking at pictures. There's just something that I connect with and really enjoy. And I think most people do as well. And I will say one of the most exciting things about this moment in time is because of mobile photography, because of the iPhone, there's so many people who are getting exposed to photography and learning photography who never would have otherwise. In the days of film, it was in some ways a tedious process. You really had to invest yourself in it, I think, unless you were just going down to the drugstore and getting pictures. So I've been lucky to be part of that through my whole career and my life. I've worked with some amazing photographers, and I've always been lucky to be part of the leading edge, I guess you'd call it, of the industry. I was in the commercial printing industry, as I said, selling scanning, when digital photography was becoming commercially acceptable, which created huge changes in the scanning industry. I won't say overnight, but over a very short period of time, the industry that I really spent most of my life with kind of collapsed because of the digital photography technology. And it was a real lesson to me that as much as I was so appreciative and invested in this timeless medium, it was always changing, and there were interesting things to be found. I happened to be very comfortable with desktop publishing, so I was able to get in on the ground floor when Photoshop came out, and the software evolution that really made our business, honestly, the photo management, what it is today. So it's been a really cool ride, and now I feel like we're sort of on the beginning of a whole new frontier of photography, photo management, the way that we organize photos, the way that we use photos, and because everybody now is essentially a photographer, there's so many ways to look at it that every morning is like something new. I'm sure both of you see that as well.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Your clients are having new challenges, and what the heck is a cloud, and what the heck is
and I think that's so true, Paul. It's really good. It's nice the way you've painted that sort of that journey, that that changes that have happened. And I think, as we all can agree, we just know in the future it is inevitable that this is going to be a continuing, changing, developing world around our like you use the words, the use of photos, the management of photos, how we relate and work with our photos, and just that whole concept, it has developed as well over time. It's very fluid and changing and moving how we can relate to them. And you've been a part of that journey, which is fantastic. So if you can explain, what is there now where we sort of sit today, this ecosystem, because I know that this sort of leads into this sort of new way that we look at photos, and, as you say, just opening up this world to a whole range of people through the digital use of cameras in our phone, and just how that all relates to sort of a bit of a world view of packaging of photos, and how that relates.
Exactly. No, that's exactly the situation we're in. And to go back to something that you said at the beginning, Chantel said at the beginning, even though this is an Apple topic, I think it also is relevant to Windows users, in that Apple has been a real leader in the whole this whole evolution. They're certainly not the first in every category, but they do a very, very good job of making all the pieces work. And I've seen multiple instances where other software manufacturers, hardware manufacturers take the lead from Apple and try to make it work in a new way or a different way or a better way. I think because Apple is here, I think it's kind of raising the bar for everybody. So I think the methodologies that we are going to talk about apply to the entire photography community. So hopefully everybody will find something to take away or something to think about. To your question about the ecosystem for the younger crowd, they may not remember the platform wars of the in 1995 or so. But there was this big debate. Basically, Steve Jobs argued that the only way you could truly create a unified, excellent experience for users in this creative space was to be able to manage and control all of the software parameters and the hardware, and that everything had to work together. At the time, there were so many Windows computer manufacturers, so many software engineers. Microsoft really didn't, there was only so much that Microsoft could dictate, essentially. And so on the Windows side, it became very fragmented. You know, things that should work didn't work once you handed it off to another application, or it may work in, you know, Windows 8 but not work in Windows 10, or you know, there was just enough of a disconnect that you had to be pretty computer savvy and willing to try things to make things work well. In Apple's side, the fact that they created the hardware, they created the software, everything could talk together, all the engineers could share, you know, their ins and outs. Over the years, it just made for a more user-friendly experience. And if you stand back and look at what we as photo managers do, in my mind, we're merely trying to connect people to their memories in as seamless a way as we possibly can.
Yep.
And anything that you put between those two endpoints is clutter, is one extra thing that has to happen. And you know, the Apple ecosystem is what it is because, to date anyway, they seem to have done the best job of connecting all the pieces. You know, I take a photo on my phone, and 6 minutes later, it's on my computer with the location stamp, with the time stamp, with already some sort of context with the other photos that are with it. And so, you know, this is kind of what we're trying to achieve, I think. We have kind of a joke in our family because we're all cooks and love to cook, except for my son, who's he can cook okay, but he's developed what he calls his effort to taste ratio. So if it's too much effort for the result, he's not going to do it.
Oh, so, I love that.
So this is a world premiere of this particular concept, but we call it Carson's effort to taste ratio. And so if it does not pass Carson's effort to taste ratio, it's not going to work. And I think this is one of the things that's really a point of mine is we know so many people want to get their photos under control.
Mm-hmm.
They want to lessen that distance between their memory and themselves, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is the challenge we as photo managers are dealing with. But more than that, I think this is the roadblock that so many people who want to do it themselves run into. They look at it, and as you have people who look at a few shoe boxes and they think it's a 2-week, exercise, and 2 months later they're still sitting on the shelf. So anyway, this is the essence of this Apple ecosystem, that it is designed to work as well together as possible, to be able to hand off things. Other parts of it, I mean, I'm really focused on the Apple Photos component of it. You can go off in all sorts of directions, but when we talk about Apple Photos and we think of ourselves as photo managers, our big value that we offer our clients is, they want to be able to find their stuff. They want to know that they saved the best quality of the stuff that they had. They want to know that it's safe and it's not going away. And the Apple Photos ecosystem, as much as any process out there, fulfills those in a very automatic, Carson-friendly way.
I think that's actually sort of the key. That's why I personally like it so much as well. Also for my clients, because it is easy to use once it's set up, and it's set up the right way. But it is so convenient. It's really, from experience, I would say there's nothing else that is so convenient like that. And as you say so rightly, people want the easy way. Fair enough. There's nothing against that. Why should we make it more complicated?
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Paul, I think, it's really so true the way you're saying, especially people listening, because we are, the majority of our listeners and we have from all over the world, actually, which is fantastic. But, they're doing that themselves. Majority of people are wanting to do that themselves. So they may engage with different help and support, or, maybe take a course or something like that. But ultimately, really, it's there's a real desire for people to do exactly what you say: find their photos, know that they're safe, know they've got the best quality that they've got, and that's exactly what people that really that are listening are wanting to do that themselves fundamentally. And I really like the way you say it lessens that distance for them to be able to do those things, from connecting them with their memories. And I think it's that peace of mind that even if they're not connecting in that moment, or they haven't, say, for a month, they know they're there. They know they can connect with those memories very quickly. So how do people practically obtain this safety, this, knowing that they've got this quality? Because the fact that we've talked about this development of technology, and there's a past that we have where we didn't have the beauty of an ecosystem, how do we get all this together so that then we do have one beautifully packaged up library? I mean, I know this could be like a 10-hour workshop here, but do you know what I mean? Like, just to sort of give some sort of practical sort of parts to obtaining this beautiful, eco world that we're talking about.
Well, let me start by giving you Apple's vision, and then we can kind of back out of that a little bit. Okay, so in the full realization of this Apple Photos ecosystem is essentially an iPhone or mobile, an iPad, iPhone, which is capturing the capturing the photos or videos or whatever we're doing, documents for that matter, and it gathers right at the beginning. It gathers a lot of information that gets added to the picture, which was really not the case in the camera world, and it still in a lot of cases is not. So you're starting out with a more, let's say, it's a richer picture than it used to be. And while this is a little bit of a segue, so stop me if I go off the rails, but I happen to believe that there is a feeling that JPEGs are kind of the end all and be all for longevity and so forth, and there's a good argument for that for sure. But I've been working on some projects recently, some older projects with motion video and so forth, and when I look at the richness of what I can capture on my iPhone, I can capture live photos, I can capture slow motion, I can capture video, I can capture raw files that are huge right now on 48 megabyte images on the new iPhones. Who am I to say that my kids 20 years from now or 30 years from now aren't going to really want to hear my voice or see me do a little short clip or any one of a number of things that these files can do. So one of the reasons I like Apple Photos is last time I counted, it could use 15 different file formats, and nothing else does. I mean, you basically can toss whatever you want in there and use it as part of your collection. Mm-hmm. So you have this iPhone that's taking all these amazing things. They're even using it to make films now, right? Commercial films. That automatically syncs up to iCloud, and iCloud takes a look at it and says, okay, I got to pass this off to everything else. It goes to your Mac. So now you have it on a larger screen, more capabilities, more power to process. And then your Mac is backed up to a time machine. So essentially, by tripping that one button, you've synced it to multiple devices that you can switch between devices. You've created 3 backups. You've created a backup in iCloud, you've created a backup on your Mac, and you've created a timed backup on Time Machine. And so we've satisfied those things. iCloud will take and keep that original file. So whatever it was, whatever format it was, it's in that original form that you can go back to. And it's protected from pilot error. So it with one exception. People, I hear comments from time to time, not so much anymore, but that Photos holds your pictures hostage. And my feeling is one person's hostage is another person's bank. So in my case, I see that as a positive. You can't inadvertently resize an image and throw away information. You can always go back to the original. So before I get really off the rails here, to answer your question, the camera, a iCloud account with enough storage to hold your entire library, and I think that's really important. A Mac with enough internal or connected storage that it can duplicate that as well, and time machine backup. And I think if you have that, you've got everything you need to have a secure, safe, easy as it gets experience. And I think I know, not everybody goes the full boat on that, but I think that is a good target for people to aim for.
Can you just clarify for our listeners, because talking about backing up to Time Machine requires that on your Mac you download originals in full size to your photo library, because a lot of the times on the phones it would be optimized storage to save space on the phone. The original size sits in the cloud, but in order to be able to actually make a backup copy, we need the originals. That's correct, right?
That is correct.
Yes.
So this is probably one of the awkward parts of the whole Apple journey, but essentially that's true. I mean, I believe that you should always have the originals locally usable anyway.
Absolutely.
I think whether you're on a Mac or a PC, iCloud is, in my opinion, iCloud is as secure as any cloud service out there, and they're very conscientious about privacy and all the other things. But I'm one of those that wants to have a copy of it myself, and I think you're best served by doing that. So what I find is, you may remember, like 2015, 14 was when Apple switched to solid state hard drives from the spinning hard drives, right? And particularly for mobile, and then they started using them in the MacBook Pros and the MacBook Airs and so forth. And the problem was that solid state drives are just plain expensive. And so everybody got the 256 gig drive because it was the cheapest one, right?
Yes.
And it is like the kiss of death.
It is a problem. Yeah, we see that a lot with clients, because when they buy a computer at the shop or the store, they're being told, oh, you don't need a big internal drive, you can keep it all in the cloud. Not realizing that, yes, you can do that, but then you don't have original files on your computer, and hence they cannot be backed up, and you're not in full control. So I always tell my clients, when the time comes to buy a new computer, make sure that you've got as big of an internal drive as you can afford, because it just makes your life easier, because otherwise you will have to keep your photo library on an external drive, which is one thing if you're desktop, but if you've got a laptop, I just find it a nuisance, to be honest. And it's the risk is bigger that you drop it, you lose it, whatever. It's so much easier when it's on the internal drive, I find. But this is something I'm not happy about, how these computers are being sold to people and tell them, oh, you can keep it all in the cloud, it's so easy. Not really.
No, you're spot on. That is one of the big deals. I mean, the prices are starting to come down now. It's a little less. I tell anybody who asks me, if it's a portable device, right? If it's a portable computer, a Mac, 1 terabyte minimum, because you're going to need it.
Yeah.
What I have had success with though is when somebody gets to that point where they're going to upgrade and they just can't justify that extra exercise drive. What I have them do, if it's still working fine, is turning their old machine into a photo hub, and because they can set that on a desk in the recreation room or the den, plug in a big hard drive, and connect to the cloud, and it can be sitting back there doing that, and they can still have their optimized stuff on their local, but they get the originals, they get a time machine backup that's worth something.
That's
so
clever.
forth.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about the Macs. You can't kill them. They live forever.
No, they keep going and going.
You can't, I've still got one from 2011, I think.
Yeah.
And it works fine, but I can't upgrade anymore. So I can't run the latest software. It stopped at High Sierra, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
we have the same
Still
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've touched on, you need an iPhone, you need the iCloud, you need a Mac. Transferring photos is easy because it goes through the cloud, so it all happens automatically. It's rather easy to set up. You need to make the right connections to tick those boxes, download originals if you can, and have it all do its magic. I love that moment when it's being set up and it all happens.
Yes, I know. It's like,
whoa. We've also touched on backing up, and now one thing that often comes up with Mac or Apple clients is like, okay, so I've got my photo library, but I've got a partner, I've got a family. How can they add to it? How can they see it? Can't we have a family photo hub in the photo library? This is something that's always coming up when working with families. Yeah.
Right. Well, this could be a whole show by itself, to be sure. Having said that, your timing is amazingly good, because we've all dealt with this forever, and Apple with the new iOS, the new iPhone operating system, basically the new Apple Photos that comes with all the new stuff, now has a shared library feature on iCloud.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks really promising. It has some caveats to it. There's a few things you have to understand. And I think that part of the conversation, when you're running into that kind of scenario, it really deserves a conversation with the family.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I don't know many parents who really want to see their teenagers' pictures. Right. So, and one of my colleagues in Canada, just when it first came out, they went, "Oh, this is great," because we've been trying to do this for like forever in a seamless way. And the first thing they figured out is that the wife is a minimalist, and she deletes anything that's like remotely unnecessary to her, right? And the guy keeps like 5 shots of the same baby step kind of thing, right? And they both, that's how they do stuff. And so when the guy realized that 2/3 of his pictures were getting deleted by his wife, they stopped and said, "Whoa, let's rethink this thing." So it's a 2-part thing. The first part is families have to understand, and maybe it helps them appreciate what we do a little bit more, but they have to understand that shared libraries need some curation. Somebody has to curate them. And it used to be, and you can still certainly do this, where I used to have one person in the family, usually turned out to be the wife, but not always, who is the curator, right?
Yes.
And then every month or so, the partner would go through their stuff and then send over the things that were relevant that they wanted to share. And you can actually set up some automations for that. I use a really cool little app called Hazel, which looks for a hot folder, which in this case is usually on Dropbox, and anything that goes into that from the partner automatically gets imported into Apple Photos, and so their quote master collection has those added. So you can do things like that. And if you're a photo manager, or you know a photo manager who can set it up for you, I mean, those kinds of things are fine, because another cool thing about Apple is that it's incredibly customizable with automations and shortcuts and things like that. But in this case, the way that the photo library, the iCloud shared library, the terminology is going to get crazier, works is that you can, someone sets it up and they essentially create a second library within their Apple Photos. And so one of them is the shared library, one of them is their personal library. Now, a photo can only exist in one of those two libraries, but they can be seen in both libraries. Okay, so let's say that, if you had 5 photos from a weekend trip that you wanted in the shared library, you would then simply move them into the shared library, and they would be visible to whoever else has access to the library, and they could add their pictures, and so you would have this collective thing. The details are a little too geeky to go into here, but suffice it to say, it's very clever. It's very, I think it's very workable, but it requires some understanding by the people involved. So it's not the kind of thing where you just push a button and magically everything happens. I think for those kinds of things, a lot of the processes that we have used forever, are still going to be really valid. But for specific things, I think this could be interesting. And you can have up to 6 people subscribe to the shared library, which is, typically a family sort of thing. But I can also see opportunities to use it in a small business environment. If you're in real estate, and you have collections of photos that need to be shared, I'm still sort of playing around with that. But I think it's a cool tool. I'm sure it's going to get better and cooler, as a lot of Apple things do.
So Paul, does that mean that there's a like a second account with like another 2 terabyte? Like if you were to, have storage, it's an additional, bit of storage,
right.
Or does it sort of count, on one account?
Just
as far as the size.
Yeah, it counts on one account. So in other words, whoever creates the shared library in the first place, their space is being used with this.
Right.
Okay.
So this is a very technical question. But you mentioned the opportunity for businesses. I really like that idea. So like in practical steps, would that mean, let's say Fiona and I want to create a shared photo library. So she's got her Apple ID, I've got mine, we've got our independent libraries, and we do stuff for the podcast. So could we have a new Apple ID for the podcast and then create a shared library And whenever we have photos that concern our podcast, we can move them from our individual personal library into that shared library. Is that how it would work?
Exactly.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Right.
So then that would sit on either one of our accounts.
Yes, whoever has the biggest space, or
Right.
whoever starts the account.
Okay.
It's like
So-
a Dropbox shared folder in a way. I can create a
well-
folder in Dropbox, and I can share it with Fiona, and it counts against both of our storage.
True.
If I have so it's the
Right,
same.
right,
It
right.
would count against both of. No,
Well,
only one.
No. So
Right.
in the
Yeah.
case of the photos library,
Mm.
it's only going to count against the person who creates it.
Yeah.
Right.
So
yes.
if you're on Ventura and you go into the settings for Apple Photos,
Mhm.
you'll see an option now to turn on a shared iCloud library.
Right.
And
Yeah.
when you turn that on, it will then prompt you to invite somebody to it.
Mhm.
And then when you open up Apple Photos, where you see, I think it's in the upper right-hand corner. I don't have my open right now, but there's a where you can see your entire library, or you can just see it with or without the shared photos, basically.
Right.
Now-
Okay.
Now there's a thing that says you can see your personal library, you can see your shared library, or you can see them both at the same time.
Okay.
Now the goofy thing in our technical terms is that in your I don't know how far you want to go down this road, but I will tell you, because you got me started. You're
Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry.
That's
you're
good.
along
Keep
for
going.
you're along for the ride.
Yeah.
So-
That's it. Go.
So when you have your personal library, you have all the albums that you've made for your personal library,
Yes.
right? Okay. Now let's say you have an album that's today's podcast, and you take all the media relating to this podcast and you say, I want to move this to the shared iCloud library.
Mhm.
So it goes there, and it still shows up because now you're looking at both libraries.
Yes.
You're looking at the shared library and your own library. As soon as you disconnect from the shared library, you're still going to have an empty album there that says today's date.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
And Fiona is not going to be able to see any of your albums.
Mhm.
There is no album structure or feature in the shared library itself. So you're basically, it's like you're always sort of dipping from that. It's kind of a pool that you're using.
Yeah.
And you can add those photos to a library of your own, which may or may not include that, depending on whether you're viewing both libraries or not. So there's a little bit of a head trip, and we're the people that we're kind of brainstorming with, we're saying, okay, can we do this? Can we do this? How do we break this? But I think it's for any photo managers, I think it's a good thing to play with, because I think in many situations it has real value. But it needs to be, I think it needs to be something where you're working with clients who are somewhat savvy, maybe a notch above the regular
the
do-it-yourselfer.
the techie level.
Yeah.
And I think this is where it's really helpful, and I really hope that this has been helpful for people listening, because there are definitely people out there that are very tech savvy that are listening,
Oh
and
yeah.
they do
Yeah.
a lot of this stuff on their own, and they explore and look and try to find new ways to do, like you say, to bring that connection between, them and their memories without the Carson, what do we call it? The Carson effect.
Car- Car-
Effort to taste.
Carson's effort to taste ratio.
Yeah. But I really do think that this is an awesome tool for people to have a look at and see if this might really fit in their family, because there are certain photos from their kids that they may really love to have in their library, and it's almost like a vehicle to get it into their own library, through this shared album folder structure that is available now. In a different way to what it was before, because we don't have to go down what it was before, but looking now at what it is now. So I think this is really helpful. I think it's a great new tool, and like you say, this is the thing I love about Apple, is that they're always expanding and looking at new things, and new features come out, and this is only going to be a space, I think, which does get more streamlined. But yeah, just sort of note to listeners of just looking at what it's, and we've said this many times, look at the settings. It could be a click of a button that really just makes such a difference to what they're doing. And often it's just trying to find out what that click of that button in that setting means, and what then changes. And like you say, you're testing it to see if you can break it, kind of thing. And what does it do, and where does it go? And if that folder is empty, why, and where did the folder, it's still a lot of questions. And I think for people, it's just a really great way to look at getting those photos into a centrally managed space that can be backed up. Ultimately, we're connecting people with their memories, and that's this is a vehicle and an opportunity maybe to do that. Before we kind of wrap up, Paul, I wanted to, if there's sort of, well, I was going to ask about the cool tricks and tips and features and things like that, which again, we could do a whole nother podcast. One thing I really want to encourage people to do, and we'll have all the links and things in our show notes for you, and how people can reach you and follow along with your learnings, and a leading cutting edge sort of way in this area, and always keeping up with what Apple are doing. I really do want to encourage people to have a look at your newsletter and to register for that. You've always got some fabulous things in there, and I love the way that you really do step people through how to do something. So you don't just say check this feature out or whatever. Like, you do have some great screenshots and explanation, and like you've done today, you really have a lovely way of giving the background as to why. And I think that's important, because then we can grasp, oh, this is what I'm trying to achieve. And so then the steps can sort of make a bit more sense. So,
if I can, I think there's one kind of unifying thing that I'd like to share. Because I'm prepping for a conference, and so this is my thinking period here. But I think that what all of this goes to, and what Apple has really promoted since day one, is that you really want to have all your photos in one place. And the reason I've seen this come up in multiple blog posts and so forth this year. I don't know what it is about this year, but I think that we are right at the beginning of kind of a new type of photo management. What I think is cool, it's kind of a segue from the shared photo library. I think that because we are all now photographers, we need to all learn how to cull our photos in a strategic way. And the problem we have now, when we look at, if our whole lives are spread out or are sitting on this, SSD, I love that because, I mean, I have photos pop up in the memories thing all the time that I'd totally forgotten about. And to me, that's the magic of the whole thing. And if there are people who like to sort of compartmentalize. No, I want this library. I want all this other stuff over here, and they never see it. And they don't get that surprise and delight kind of thing. But the other thing is, I believe we're now at a point where we really have 3 different types of photo management happening all at once. When I started with the Photo Managers APO in 2013, it was a very simple straight line process. It was almost all about pulling out the shoe boxes, doing the ABC culling of your photos, scanning the photos, putting some information on it, and handing a disk full of folded files, course structure, back to the client. It was pretty straightforward. And essentially, it was a digitized version of what we were doing in the real world. It didn't kind of take advantage of all the digital stuff, right? So we have those, and a lot of those, that's really all they needed. They just needed to be preserved. They needed to be identified in some way. Then we're now at this point, because we're doing all this stuff, we're taking thousands and thousands of pictures. And the idea that our one collection is going to be distilled down as our legacy collection to our children and whoever wants to watch them, I think is now out the window. I mean, there is no way, I know that I take an average of 2,000 photos a year with an average of about 68 moments within that. Actually, it's more than that, but anyway, if I extend that out, there is no way that I'm ever going to keep those photos down. It's not like deleting old emails, right? So now I have this ever-growing collection of photos, which is a secondary thing because there's convenient stuff in there, there's reminder stuff in there, there's junk in there, there's extra photos that I want to get rid of, but there's also a bunch of photos that are only ever going to mean something to me personally. It could be a moment, on a dock someplace. It could be who knows what it is, but we all have those pictures that we look at and we go, man, I remember that, or it was, something special. So I've got those, which are only ever going to mean something to me. Yeah. And then from both of those groups, now you get down to this idea of, okay, what am I going to hand off? What is that final legacy collection going to look like that, shares who I was, what I did, where I went, but is not so much that people are going to start yawning, right? So we have sort of by nature become photographers. Now we get to be curators. So we all have to learn how to curate. And I think that's like the next big thing, is to say, how do we teach people to curate what they have and not just say, not just save all the pictures where people are staring at the camera.
Right. And do you have a magic solution to that, Paul?
It's a work in progress.
Okay. All right. Stay tuned.
So
right?
Anyway, that's my diatribe for them.
Oh, I love it. I think that's great. I think it's very accurate too. And I like that analogy of, well, the reality of we don't want to get rid of that photo on the dock. Like, that is very special to us, but you're right, it doesn't need to be part of that legacy photo. And so how do we then identify the difference? It's a really good point. But look, I love it. We'll have to have you back. We'll have to have you back.
Love to.
Thank you so much for today. I think it's just been really a real joy to be able to talk shop. And I hope those listening have enjoyed coming along on the ride with us to just talk. You know, you obviously have a lot of knowledge and, you know, real joy about just where Apple have come from and where they're heading. And so I think it's really helpful. I definitely agree with, you know, the direction that people are going in. I think there's a real awareness out there for people that are doing this with their photos and looking at those options, and it's an ever-changing world. So to be able to have a bit of a look into the window of Apple has been really helpful. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thanks,
This has
Paul.
been a lot of fun.
Yeah, we'll have you back. There's so much more to talk about Apple Photos, how to
wonderful.
curate and projects we can do and all that. But I think we have to wrap it up for today. So listeners, as you know, hop over to our website and you will find all the show notes with all the links to Paul's business and his offerings. Check it out. And I agree with Fiona, absolutely sign up for his newsletters. I love them. And also sign up to our newsletter, please, while you're there. So also don't forget that we've got our little wish list. Again, in the show notes, there is a link to the wish list. And if you have any questions that you like us to answer, you know, put it in there, ask us, and we'll either respond to you directly, personally, or we might make an episode out of it or get an expert in for you that will answer your question. So, and there's no silly questions, just ask. And don't forget to leave us a review, please, and to share with anyone who you think would be interested in learning how to manage their photos better. And I think that's it. And I'm Chantal from Photos in Order.
I'm Fiona from Photo Helper, and we've been talking with Paul, which has been fantastic. So thank you again, Paul, for joining us today.
Thanks,
Thanks
Paul.
for having me.